Michael Devine here, Gray Matters Radio, coming at ya. Yeah, another episode. Here we are. Somewhere, somebody, somewhere is listening to this for the first time. What is Gray Matters Radio? Gray Matters Radio, it's a show like any good therapy session that operates somewhere in the world in between, the gray area. And of course, I'm your host, Michael Devine, America's counselor. Now you're probably asking yourself, how to get roped into a therapy session? Well, I kind of took America on as a client without their permission. I kind of saw things going the way that they were going, and somebody had to step up and do it. So why not Michael Devine?
Why not Mike Devine?
Why not Michael Devine? Because the country right now is kind of like a child stuck in the middle of a bad marriage between two parents who just keep putting themselves first. So it's my time to do some family therapy. Now, naturally, I couldn't do the show alone. It's too big of a challenge. It's much too big for Michael Devine, even though my ego is much bigger than my own ambitions. I needed some help. So, along the way, Bill Reed, the armchair quarterback himself, the armchair therapist. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. You are America's counselor. I kind of feel like America's redheaded stepchild, so
well,
it kind of works out for both of us.
Well, you shouldn't put yourself down. I mean, you're a slouch. I mean, you're tremendous.
Well, no, I mean, I'm Irish. It's St. Patty's Day.
I didn't know you were Irish, actually.
Well, come on. Who isn't Irish? Especially on St. Patty's Day.
That is true.
Well,
man.
I'm wearing a green shirt, so clearly I'm Irish.
I do explain to an English gentleman, Max Miller, the voice of the Radical Center, syndicate Shimon. Mm-hmm. He's an English guy. He's from Texas. Well, he's from Britain, but he's an American citizen. And literally, I go, well, I'm Irish. And he goes, I'm like, dude, Devine, hello. I'm like, I can tell you where my family came from in Ireland. I had to tell a British guy that Devine was Irish. Like, I have no idea. But yeah, I'm Irish too. I didn't know that. I've known you 30 years. I never knew.
I mean, I couldn't tell you what percentage. I mean, I have that DNA test from Christmas that I still haven't taken. I might come back like Elizabeth Warren. I'm like 0.2% Irish. But you better believe
you very well might, man.
Irish. Let's go get some tattoos.
Funny story about this. I don't know if you know that. So when they do this DNA testing, they're constantly updating the databases.
Like a gene pool.
Yeah, so it came back after Jill and I did it. It had like some Italian in me, so I'm almost angry. Like, where did this come from? I mean, I was happy a little bit, but I was like, why? What did you guys not tell me? And then they updated it, and then it totally came into what my parents told me. So I almost thought, like, did somebody sleep with somebody? Did somebody lie?
So maybe you were like a descendant of Mussolini, and they didn't want to tell you.
I don't know. I mean, it turned out there was no Italian. They updated it.
They lied to you.
Apparently, I was upset. I was angry. I was like, well, now I know why I like noodles so much. I mean,
oh boy,
I know. So speaking of green, we got today's show. I'm really excited about today's show for a lot of different reasons. Yeah. We'll get to our guest here in a second. They're actually want to be one of the new sponsors of Gray Matters. So apparently, we're at that next level where we actually have a sponsor, which is totally cool. But before we kind of dive in and just kind of introduce everybody, the marijuana industry is kind of interesting. Just the idea of pot, because I'm 39, I'll be 40, and I'm not saying I advocate smoking pot, but we'll just say that I know a decent amount about said industry. And I remember being in college, Bill. We just always talk a lot of times about, dude, what would it be like if pot were legal? And we'd always have like this idea of like, we'd go down to like UDF, like a little, the corner store, and get like a packet of like Marlboro Greens,
Right, Marlboro Green.
Yeah, it's like, it's gonna be like a pack of cigarettes. Like, I mean, I don't think we really ever thought it would be. You go to like a liquor store and you can actually pick up like an eighth of like pot. I don't think we ever thought that, but I think we just thought it'd be like buying beer, like just a pack of cigarettes,
Sure.
And so. Now, flash forward. Have you been out to California or Colorado, where like legal?
I went out to Breckenridge last year.
Yeah, did you go to the dispensary?
We stopped at a dispensary just outside of South Park, which is a real place, by the way. I was amazed. I was like, this place is real. And we stopped at a little store there with some friends of ours. I just wanted to check it out, and I remember going inside, and I was like, wow, it's literally how I pictured it. And it was a younger woman behind the counter, and they had all these different brands and kinds, and she was explaining it to me, and I asked her, she was very, very nice. I asked her, could I take some pictures, and she was like, oh, yeah, thanks for asking. I said, I'm from Ohio, so we don't have that. So I'm like, I just thought it was a really cool concept, because it's like something that was so like kind of taboo just 10 or 20 years ago, and then now it's being accepted as I think it should be, because, when you look at it compared to some of the other substances that are out there, I mean, you can't even compare the two between, say, alcohol, which I would say is arguably the most popular substance, and it's that's no problem, drink some more, have another one for the road. But then when it comes to marijuana, it was always like, shh, don't you can't say that, or you can't do that, and it's just you kind of look back and you're like you can't even really compare the two, like between as far as safety goes. I mean, it's crazy.
Not the same. I mean, think about like you go to the airport in Denver and they have literally boxes set up so you can throw away your pot so you don't bring it with you on the airplane. You don't see that for alcohol.
Yeah.
Like, oh, did you forget your little bottles that you like? Oh, here, put it. It is a lot different. There is a different kind of feel to it, but it's crazy just how quickly it's changed. It's the whole mindset of it. It used to be literally one of those things where it was a little more taboo, and now
Absolutely.
it's just not. Now it's like one of those like you have like people's parents going, "Hey, like you can pick me up a T-shirt." Hey, can you bring me home a container? Like, I mean, it's the weirdest freaking thing. And so, you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I looked into the whole idea of like, hey, like, what would it be like to open up like a dispensary? Like here in Ohio, it was really interesting. They had a legalization ballot a couple years ago on.
Oh,
and
yes.
And it wasn't that it didn't pass not because the people didn't actually want to legalize pot. It didn't pass because the people that sponsored it, they wanted to have a monopoly where they were the only ones allowed selling it and growing it. So people turned it down, right? And
as they should, rightfully so.
It was a good, and so then they passed it medicinally. So they opened up these application processes. And so I remember looking at the applications and seeing, well, the ones that are getting approved, like what do they need to have? And very quickly I started realizing, okay, this is legitimate big business and it is shady as all get out. Literally, people had to have $6-7 million liquid. Not even, oh, I'm going to go and get a small business loan. I'm talking straight up 6-7 mil. You'd have a list of like 20 partners in this LLC, and then most of them were out of state, where you'd have one person on the application be local. The rest owned 15 dispensaries in other states. So all of a sudden, you quickly start realizing that there's a monopoly to this, even though we voted one down for no monopolies.
Right.
The way they set it up with the regulatory process here, it was very much like they were having it to where it's a good old boys network where you can tell all of a sudden the politicians. And then right around the same time, I was listening to Howard Stern actually. And then literally an advertisement by John Boehner, the former Republican Speaker of the House for Ohio, is doing seminars. Mr. Crybaby himself is doing seminars.
Mr. Crybaby
and
himself.
The funny thing is, like the whole time, I think we thought he was crying. Really, he was maybe just blazed. He just his eyes were watering. I don't know. But so literally, he was doing seminars across the state.
He just had the munchies. He was hangry.
I know.
He was hangry.
So he was doing in the industry so for people kind of like Tony Robbins, but doing seminars for people who want to invest in the marijuana industry and how to make money in it. And my head literally exploded of the conservative Republicans who are really against it. Here's the former Speaker of the House is actually now at forefront of all this. So there's a lot to kind of learn. It's not about like, hey, dude, let's get into the pot industry. There's a lot kind of to this. And that's why I'm really excited by today's guest, because I think if there's the side to the industry that no one really knows about, and I think these guys are hands down, I think, the best ones to kind of talk about it. Now, of course, I'm going to talk them up. They're going to be a sponsor. So let's be real. I'm going to be speaking good about them, but I'm serious. I wouldn't have a sponsor come on the show if I didn't believe in what it is that they were doing and they didn't believe in it. So Canna Group, they are a payment solutions company where basically they specialize in working with the marijuana industry. And they're going to talk here in a second just about what they do, why it is that they do it. But they are a company that's almost like coming to the rescue, I think, of a lot of companies in this industry that are getting taken advantage of by the payment processors, losing their ability to even make money. And so there's a way of making money in the industry, and then there's a way of making money that's fair for everybody. And I think these guys really have found that really awesome balance and just really care about the industry in and of itself. So I want to introduce Sammy Spezio, Dominic Busilla of Canna Group. Guys, welcome.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So, tell me a little about, so Sammy, this is kind of your brainchild. You started it. So tell me about it, man. Like, what got you into this? Why the pot industry? Why payment processing? Give me an idea.
Well, it actually goes back almost 3 decades.
Wow.
I was secure in a position I thought I'd be in for the rest of my life. The next thing I knew, that position was taken away from me, and I had an opportunity to get into the payment processing industry as a whole. With that, immediately saw that there's a lot of changes to be made because of the money that's available in this industry to the representatives as well as the ISOs. There's also a lot of unmoral decisions made. That was something that I quickly caught on to, and I wanted to make a little change there. So as I was out in the field as a sales rep, one of the things I would do is I would more act as a consultant to the merchants, providing them the information that they wanted based on my education of the industry. And I became a student of the industry early on. And with that education also gave me vision. And I was able to see some of the emerging markets and what was taking place and where maybe I should position myself 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. And this was back in the early to mid 90s. I was written up as one of the first individuals to place an ATM machine outside of the banking industry here in Ohio. Quickly worked with a lot of the other organizations within Ohio. Credit Union One was one of them. We formed the No Surcharge Alliance, which you'll see now throughout credit unions when you go to the ATM machines. So I got involved in an early age, if you will, in this industry because it was pretty much in its infancy at that time in developing some of the things that we're using today, some of the techniques, the processes, and so forth. So with that, again, the industry became stagnant for a while. Really wasn't a lot of growth until the digital age. And then we started seeing companies like Microsoft get involved, companies like PayPal emerge, and other companies such as that that were never on the landscape before. It was pretty much an ISO world. We all were considered acquirers for MasterCard and Visa. We all went out and talked to merchants in order to gain their confidence, in order to obviously get their processing. That's how we all made a living. So as things changed, I started seeing the change also from the low-risk space, which is pretty much what we dealt in then, to the high-risk space, where there's more companies coming in with products that were somewhat uncomfortable to the environment, if you will. People didn't understand them, so it's like anything else. It's taboo. If we don't understand it, it's automatically, rejected. So that was one of the things that we started seeing as well. So they had to develop other platforms in order to start accepting these types of merchants. And with that, they created the high-risk space. That's the space I've been dabbling in now for about 10 years, seeing some of the things that were taking place. And I wanted to position myself. And at that time, we were dealing with debt collections, to e-tobacco, adult entertainment, things of that nature. And it became clear as the environment that we're now speaking of, the marijuana environment, and how the nation was seeing it as more palatable, if you will. I noticed quickly on that this was going to be an opportunity for me and my industry as well. So with that, we started looking at the landscape of things, positioning ourselves back in 2012 in order to be poised, if you will, and ready for this migration as we're seeing it now. And I've seen a lot of things happen just in the recent years.
Well, actually, I want to know before you go any further, I guess when I hear high risk, I think, because, me, being a clinician, I use credit cards all the time. And I look at my percentages and what I pay, and it's a decent amount of money. Even when you add up 3%, 4% can get up high there. I look at, I'm not obviously high risk because, why would I be high risk? I'm a therapist, right? I guess I don't understand, why is the marijuana industry high risk now when it's legal almost dang near every way?
Well, it's not legal at the federal level, and that's one of the biggest issues right now. And until it is, we're still going to see that in the high-risk space. What's happened, actually, there's some players that have gotten into that shouldn't have, and that's what has happened in this industry, unfortunately, that makes it difficult for the, quote, honest players, if you will, to be able to be sustainable, because we're constantly doing damage control. What we're seeing out there, merchants have been introduced to the payment processing realm. They've been given products that aren't valid. When they come to see these products fall by the wayside, meaning they'll be set up one month and it's taken away from them the next month, because reps are going in, they're misrepresenting the product, they're setting them up under false SIC codes, which is SIC code is an identification for each industry. So for instance, let's say I have a head shop, and with that, head shops are legal. But if I'm selling things within the head shop that aren't legal or looked at upon as high risk, I jeopardize my entire business.
Oh, wow.
Just for that. So those are some of the things. So as I'm going in, I'm going to set you up, although you're selling things you probably shouldn't be, it's more to high risk. I'm going to set you up under false pretenses, allow you to fly under radar, if you will, as long as you can, because I just made my money as a representative. I'm gone. You deal with it. And that's unfortunately what we've seen, and why we're trying to change all that, and why we act more as a consultant to the industry as opposed to anything else. Payment processing, yes, that is one of the things we do, but more importantly, we help merchants facilitate and manage their businesses.
Yeah.
So when we see a lot of the changes, for instance, as I was getting ready to say, one of the low-risk banks, we'll go unnamed at this point, decided they wanted to get into this industry because they saw an opportunity to take what is considered high risk, and that would be in the CBD world, and put that into a low-risk space with contingencies. All right, those contingencies were simply, if it was vape, it was treated one way. If it was non-vape, it was treated another way. And with that, they started bringing all these merchants, hundreds, if not thousands of merchants, in under the low-risk portfolio, saying that they could process, as you do, Mr. Devine, as anybody else would, pizza shop or anything like that. And with that, they again started providing all these accounts to these merchants. I got a call on Friday from the vice president of this company saying that they were pulling the rug on this solution, and no longer all those thousands of merchants that had just been established as early, November up until now are now losing that processing.
Like, how are they able to get away with that? I mean, isn't there business practices? I mean, because I sign a contract, and so I imagine. I mean, how does it? Why are they able to get away with it? Because it seems so shady. It's almost like bait and switch almost. Like, I'm going to get you sign it for one thing, then I'm going to switch it around, and a lot of times the other solution, it's going to be a lot higher.
And to make it matters worse, they give them 45 days to find a new solution, or they're going to be out of business. They will have no means of being able to process. So what we do is we go in and we set them up under the categories in which they process or which they do business, so that when it does come time to an audit or something of that nature, which these card companies are doing behind your back, whether you know it or not, they're monitoring their chargeback ratios, which is one of the things that puts you into a high-risk category. They're monitoring the association factor. Does it look good for my bank to deal and associate with your type of business? So they look at all those things into consideration of how you're treated and how you're priced. So, for instance, an adult entertainment can be priced in one category where a collection agency can be priced in another. And there's no rhyme or reason as to what those numbers are other than what they, in my opinion, pull out of their hat. We've seen anything from 4% all the way up to 16%. In the processing rates out of your profit.
Wow.
16%. It's outrageous.
That is insane.
That's highway robbery. I mean,
it's beyond that.
That's legalized extortion.
Well, and the thing is, like, I mean, and Dom, like, maybe this is a good place for you, because I know this is something you're kind of new to the industry, but you being the guy that you are, I mean, we were talking a lot about the taxes, the laws, the politics behind things, and how is it that this is legal, and why is it nobody is even allowed to say anything? Like, what have you found, or in your research? Because that, to me, that seems patently unfair, illegal, and if this were any other industry, that would be predatory practices.
Well, it's not necessarily that it's illegal. It's that, when you're looking at the scope of how many banks out there do back processing on the low risk space. On the high risk space, there's only about 300 banks, give or take. It's an estimate, but when there's that few of options for a merchant, essentially these processors do, in a way, have the ability to charge whatever it is they choose, because your options as a merchant within the cannabis space, you don't have many, or even in the high-risk space in general. So in essence, it's not that it's necessarily extortion, it's supply and demand.
Right.
There's a much bigger demand for supply, so therefore, basic economics.
I mean, what are the companies saying? Because I know if this were my business, I'd be calling my congressman, I'd be doing all this. I mean, what are the companies saying as far as, like, because they're obviously coming to you guys, either they've already had their payment solution ripped out from underneath them, maybe they're realizing from a business plan the costs are way too high. Like, what are they saying?
Well, I mean, essentially their hands are tied, because in all reality, on a federal level, marijuana is still illegal. It's still Schedule I substance. So, from a federal standpoint,
they realize.
Well, and as Sammy stated, these banks and these financial institutions are looking at it, and it's like the age-old thing, guilty by association, right? And there's so many hoops that these banks and institutions will have to jump through in order to even offer services to this industry. And so when you look at like the big boys, they quite honestly don't need it in their portfolio. And the risk versus reward for these guys it's just not there.
Now, do you guys think that once this does happen, it'll kind of be like when the first domino falls, you'll see all the other ones fall in line behind them? It's almost like some people are kind of scared to be the first in a way, but once I think that door is busted open, like we're trying to do, I think you're going to see a whole flood. I think you really will.
Yeah, correct. Because once that does happen, it takes essentially where these companies are being viewed now, falling under the FinCEN stuff and everything with that. Essentially, they're being treated as though they are criminals.
Right.
And the practices that the banks have to follow in order to, work within this industry is that, well, we're assuming they're criminals. We're assuming they're money laundering. We're assuming that the cash coming in is dirty cash, if you will, and illegal cash, which in fact it's not.
No, what we're seeing actually, every case that's gone to the courts at this point under the RICO Act, which is racketeering, has been dismissed.
Wow.
Up at this point, who knows what's going to happen, but at this point, everything's been dismissed just basically because there's no merit of it. They're back to the 2010, 2012, where the government was going in and conducting raids on all these dispensaries.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It is.
Now, the marijuana, that's evil. Now, Enron,
Nah,
problem.
we're good.
Yeah, but that marijuana, man,
about,
I'll tell you what.
What was it? Remember Chappelle's show? It was like one of those where like it was white collar crime. Hey, how about would you like to come down maybe next Wednesday? To like get arrested. Well, Wednesday's bad for me. And then they go to the other guy's house and it's just like they beat his door down, shoot the dog. It's like, but that's it.
Well, that's kind of what it is.
I mean, kind of, and that's where it's just like. And that's where I think where people really don't understand the differences. Like the whole idea of when it's federal legal, doesn't matter what the states are doing, it makes people scared because technically speaking, I mean, the government can move so quickly. They could sit there in one day, I imagine, going, you know what? Yeah, okay, we're just going to shut it down. So every dispensary, we're going to raid you guys, and then we're going to...
That's going to happen, though. I kind of feel like...
Is that the fear, though? Is that basically...
It's got to have
it
a
has
fear.
been the fear for years, and until they declassify it, that will continue to be the fear until more banks get involved and loosen their reins. It will again continue to be the fear. As Dom said, out of the 1,100 some institutions in the United States, only about 300 of them, will actually step up and say, okay, we recognize this as a viable product. When they see that $6 billion last year alone was conducted in the state of Colorado in cash transactions, the banks are smart. They realize that they're losing, the transactional dollars on all of this, the retail from all these different players. So they're wanting to get involved, but they're being held back again because of federal regulations.
Sure.
I assure you, and talking to some of the bankers that I know in this industry, they're just as poised and ready for it's like the trotters at the gate. They're ready, they're poised, they're waiting for that whistle to go down, those gates to lower, and they're all going to get involved because they understand the benefits of that.
Now the thing is, if I know Trump was saying he is open to changing the federal laws to make it. Now, is that then the game changer where if federally, then all of a sudden, are we not talking high risk anymore? Or will they still try to?
It's like anything else, the evolution or it's going to take a while because there's so much money to be made at the high risk level. Because when we're able to charge 4, 5, 6% of the profit as opposed to in the low risk space when we're looking at 0.5% of profitability. There's reasons for that. And everything, I hate to say it, as we live in America, it's pretty much money driven. If there wasn't money involved, obviously our legislation and Mr. Boehner wouldn't be involved and the other people that are.
Boehner.
I'm still shocked by that.
I can't believe it. When I saw that, I saw it myself, Michael, when you said it, and I just couldn't believe that myself. When you see that he's actually partnering with the Democratic parties in order to pass this legislation and the Marijuana Act and the hemp bill that was just passed, that's what's allowing us as processors to be able to even consider processing these payments at a low-risk level because of this act that was just passed. But again, it's that uncharted territory. So people like ourselves that are what we consider the paradigm pioneers of this industry, there's a lot of things that we're dealing with. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's things that are here today, gone tomorrow, as you stated.
Well, and I think what's unfair though is that I look at there's like a lot of industries out there. Let's say it's pornography or something, right? And no one's gonna care if you get shut down due to unfair practices because, like, well, you're the idiot that went into some business that's unmoral, and that was just the nature of what was going to happen. But it's like, with something like this, it's like, all right, so many people are doing it. It's become completely open and acceptable, but I feel like it's almost like the same stigma of, I mean, think about, I mean, and I'm sure you could speak to it. I mean, how many businesses have almost gone out of business or taken a giant hit due to the unfair interest rates are being charged, due to them losing their ability to do billing? And it's like, no one cares. If this were, once again, if this were child daycare or, any other business, people would be up in arms. Like, do you think that stigma makes people not care about maybe how unfairly people in this industry are being treated?
Without question.
Yeah.
Yeah, without question.
Yeah. What are these shop owners saying? I mean, like, when you go on and talk to them, like, what are they talking about the industry? What matters to them? I mean, what are they really sharing with you guys?
From the processing standpoint, I'll speak to that. I'll allow Don to speak to the other. They're frustrated, plain and simple. They're being told one thing 1 minute, as I said, and something else applies. So as somebody would come in, unfortunately, you got a sales rep coming in. They're going to set them up under false pretenses, as I mentioned earlier, and they're giving their confidence in this individual to help them with their business matters. Well, all of a sudden that confidence is dissipates when they find out that they're in the same position, if not worse, than they were before. So again, that's where we're trying to make a difference in providing education is power. Information is power. We all know that. And what more we do, if you look at any of our blogs, if you look at our website, you look at anything that we do, we're providing content to people. We're not trying to sell you on the processing side of it. We want you to see us as an authority in this industry. And with that, we'll obviously be able to generate the other, and that is your confidence and therefore your business.
Yeah.
So that's what we're focused on more so than anything, is just trying to educate the public, allowing them to understand exactly where you stand, what the laws are, how we can help you with that and navigating through this system. So simply that's what our platform is just trying to provide that service to to our consumers.
Well, I think we need that because I think America is built upon being innovators. And I mean, you look at any major business, doesn't matter if it's tech, it doesn't matter if the internet, phone, whatever. It's you're doing something that hasn't been done before, and we kind of all talk about in this country. That okay, we should make business easier. We should make it to where we should allow for innovation. But it almost seems like, well, we want innovation as long as we agree with the business that's being run, or as long as we think it's morally okay. But then morally okay can radically change with it. How much money is the industry making?
I don't think it's just morally okay, too. You also have to understand some of the quote-unquote decision makers when it comes to the law. I mean, they have vested interest in certain, whether certain laws are passed or not, or certain, I mean, we've talked about it before, how many of them sit on boards of certain companies, and they make the laws and pass the laws, and then based on that, they just happen to get rich off that because I just happen to sit on the board of directors of this company, but there's no funny business. So I think that's part of it as well. Well, that's what I mean. Like, I just think that, once you get over that stigma, and also some of these politicians as well, and again, like you said, it's all about the dollar. I mean, it's all about who's it going to impact, who's going to make the money. And I think once the quote-unquote right people make more of this money, then you're going to see, I think it's going to be decriminalized federally. I think so. I think that's just a matter of time, I think. Hopefully we're not ignorant too much to where they're just going to keep it as that. I know under Obama he didn't really say much about it. Trump at least is saying something about it. Now, whether or not he will end up doing something, it might be another president.
Well,
I don't know.
The interesting thing, though, is what probably a lot of people don't understand. You brought up about Obama, didn't say much about it. Well, there may not have been a platform for him to publicly speak or address, but during his presidency, the Cole memo came out. And it was a huge game changer for essentially the cannabis industry, right? And what the Cole memo said, talked about on a federal level, they are... the Justice Department is no longer going to mess with states that have legalized it, assuming that they're following certain rules and guidelines.
Right.
And the feds had no reason to say, okay, well, they've enacted their state laws. We're going to allow each state to then govern those laws. and we're going to put our resources elsewhere to bigger problems and bigger issues. And that was during the Obama administration, and it probably went largely unnoticed unless you're in the industry. Fast forward to now, it's interesting you brought up, well, Trump is talking about it because he has to, because Sessions actually rescinded that memo. Just kidding.
Shredded it.
And he said, just kidding, never mind. I know all that time, DOJ wasn't going to mess with it, but hey, guess what?
Because Obama basically went, we're not going to change the laws, but I'm also telling him don't prosecute, which...
Correct.
It's great, but doesn't give like a financial company. It doesn't give a lot of people confidence,
it's
right?
It's not that he didn't tell them not to prosecute, but they set out within that memo guidelines to follow that, as a prosecutor, if they felt, and this goes back to the FinCEN stuff, whereas banks were then taking these clients, banks had to constantly be reporting back and keeping track of, they were supposed to self-manage their clients within the space and say, okay, if red flags are being thrown up, and there's a whole list. I have a list of 2 pages worth of bullet points of what they were supposed to be looking for. And if any of those became prevalent, then at that point, there'd be reason for the feds to then move in. But unless any of that was happening, during the Obama administration, it was like, okay, cool, let the states do what they do. Let state law rule, let them take care and govern themselves. And now it's kind of all up in the air. Nobody really knows exactly what's going to happen.
And that's be scary as shit because, like, I think about, obviously I've started a business, but I've started a business that's service-based, so it's not like I have a ton of overhead as far as with a giant storefront, merchandise, employees, but it is scary as shit to start a business, right? And can you imagine normal circumstances making that big investment? It's scary. Can you imagine not knowing if the laws are going to change?
Right.
Not knowing if one day to the next something might radically change to where literally you might wake up and not have the ability to do business, or even on top of that, a financial company, the guy that you're getting your funding from or your payments from and banking going, so that product we signed, nah, we're not going to do that. I know you've probably done your business models for the next 2 years. So we're actually going to double it. We're going to, no one could do business that way, and it would scare the crap out of anyone. And that's where I really feel for these businesses because they're trailblazers. They're, no pun intended, but yeah. Sorry, I had to. But seriously, like.
And Michael, you asked about, what's, frustrating for merchants and businesses, and that's just essentially it. They're trying to create, they're in a state where it has become a legal industry, and they're trying to create a business, no different than anybody else wanting to open a business in any other industry, whatever that may be, whatever your passion is. Okay, these guys, their passion is cannabis and marijuana, so they want to be in that industry just as you chose to become a psychologist or someone chooses to become a whatever it is they want to do and open that business. But the problem is they're being treated like a second-class citizen, and they're not given all of the same rights that a normal business is.
They have to pay taxes, though.
What's crazy is, like you guys have said, it was what, Colorado, it's a legit thing. Colorado's what, $6 or $8 billion?
$6 billion.
And these are tax-paying people.
That's what I mean.
And no one is taking care of them.
That's what I mean.
If you look at the demographics of the user, you look at the demographics, they're professional people. They're not your stoner on the street corner sitting around rolling joints and passing them to their buddies.
And I think that's the thing where I think when people think about this industry, they're kind of thinking that, no, we're talking legit business people with giant budgets where we're talking like I had a client of mine, he's getting his PhD in biochemical engineering and extraction processes. Like we're talking like PhDs, medical doctors, business people with years of experience running these businesses. Even if you go into the dispensaries, even the people working in the store, obviously they enjoy it, but we're talking it's business. They're asking you very pointed questions.
They're knowledgeable about their products.
They're knowledgeable. They're enthusiastic about it. They're checking IDs.
Well, and customers come from all walks of life too. Like
sure.
I remember when I first heard about dispensaries opening, my thought was, immediately I figured some guy walking in with long hair trying to buy something like, hey man, I'll pay you Tuesday and shit. Like, no, it's like a store. It's a legitimate.
Well, here's the weird thing. So there's only 3 states currently that it's actually still illegal. There's only 3 states.
Texas,
let's guess.
Texas,
let's guess.
No.
I want to say,
hold on, let's see. All right, so there's 3 states, right?
Yeah, it's not Texas.
So obviously not Texas, but I can't take that one back. So I say
son
Texas.
of a gun. I'm gonna say Alabama.
Nope.
No, it's got to be a red state. It's gotta be a
Florida?
red
You'll
state.
never
No.
guess it.
No.
Really?
They're actually no.
Alaska?
No,
No,
Alaska.
they're totally legal.
Alaska is
Hawaii?
fully recreationally
All right, so
legal.
What about Hawaii?
Hawaii is medicinal,
Okay.
and they do. And I just read that Hawaii now allows people from out of state to come in who have a medicinal card and get it while they're on vacation in Hawaii. Yeah.
Man, wouldn't be Nevada, would it?
No, Nevada.
Can you give us like
kind
a
of
region?
feels,
Is it now? Are it scattershot or is there a pattern to the
It's kind of
regions?
pinpointed,
It's pinpointed.
Man, I
All
don't,
right,
I
so
don't
we're
know.
gonna go Idaho,
Idaho,
South Dakota, and Kansas.
Really?
Now, ironically, in Nebraska, it's been decriminalized, but there is no programs. There's no, so they've only decriminalized it. So
Wow.
technically,
Yeah.
but every other state. Now, how about this in D.C.? Okay, here's the hypocrisy.
Yeah.
It's legal in D.C. It's recreationally legal in D.C. In fact, however, they cannot sell it commercially. So it's legally recreational, but
Right.
you can't go anywhere and buy it.
So you do start getting an idea.
So explain to me that.
It's like saying you
So
can
there's-
drive a car, Junior, but I don't have the keys.
Or you can drive a car to a bar and drink, but you can't drive it home.
But you do start seeing why it's like, because let's say we did credit card processing company. Let's say let's say we have 80% of our clients in that business, but then in one felt swoop we could lose all of our business. So it does make a little sense why it is a little high risk. Just like if you're working in an industry where there's a higher risk of you dying, you get hazard pay. So I get it, but and this is where I think where exactly, and I think this is important, whether it be if you're listening and you're thinking about going into it, or maybe you're kind of going, I don't know if I'm getting screwed over or not. What is fair? I mean, as a company, obviously you pride yourself on, hey, we're trying to take a lot of the BS out of it. We're trying to be fair. I mean, where is it going wrong? How are people being shady and with some of these practices?
A lot of it's just not being honest.
Straight up, just not.
Straight up, not being honest.
And no rules or laws against
no,
that.
And there isn't. It's like the Wild West, unfortunately, right now. What we're trying to do is bring continuity to that.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've done is we've positioned ourselves with multiple players. And that way, if player A happens to drop out, we got player B, C, and D in order to fall back on.
Yeah.
That way, we have a safety net. We've got a foolproof solution should something happen. So if this was to happen, which we can't avoid that, we have no control over what the banks or federal, the government's going to do. But in the event that would happen, we do have, obviously something to fall back on. And that's one of the things that a lot of players in our space haven't done. They put as you said, all their eggs in one basket. And with that, if it does dry up on 80% of your portfolio,
sorry, can't do billing this week.
Yeah, exactly. So we've positioned ourselves differently. One, with my 27 years experience in the industry, having been here since '92, I know what to do now. I know how to take care of the customers. Our business is building relationships. Unless we can build a solid relationship, that merchant is subject to leaving us just simply because somebody came in a little prettier, a little fancier in their speech, and was able to take that client away from us.
Well, I can only imagine what someone with no laws can do. Because I know, in my experience because credit cards is how I do all my business, where they'll come at you with, this is what your rate's going to be.
Yep.
And then you start getting your bill, and there's all kinds of hidden fees. There's that was a rewards card. Well, that was an HSA. Well, that was a keyed in. That was a swipe. That was, you did this on Friday.
Oh.
And they literally, and it's technically allowed. They don't tell you. And so, and that's something I've had to learn the hard way. And so think about it. That's shady as all hell.
Yeah, it is.
And they're allowed to get away with that one with disclosure. I can't imagine what you're able to get away with when there's no laws.
Well, the bad thing about it has been referenced back to your contract. And they'll say, did you read your contract? And most merchants will say, no, I did not.
It's 300 pages.
Unfortunately, the terms and conditions of what you signed are within that contract, and they have full legal right to do pretty much whatever they want to do, and it's stated right there. And that's one of the biggest problems as well. Merchants don't realize what type of arrangement they're getting themselves into. So it's like anything else. When it hits the fan, then all of a sudden, the blame's being pointed elsewhere, as opposed to just themselves as well. So there's got to be blame on both sides of the fence. The merchants have to be responsible for their business. At the same time, my industry has to provide accurate information. That's, again, one of the things that we've dealt with and one of the stances we've taken. And one of the things I pride myself in as a business owner, not only dealing with national accounts, but dealing with local accounts. When I go out into the marketplace, I'm dealing with people that I do business with. I want to be able to go out there and hold my head proudly when I do that. And that's, again, one of the stances we've taken in order to, again, create and bring a product that's going to sustain them long term. I'm not setting people up, we're not going to set people up for long-term gratification. When we establish a relationship with somebody, it's based on the information they provided us, dissecting that information, providing them the proper solution, and then we provide that information back to them to allow them to make an informed, intelligent decision. How how novel, right?
But that's I think that's what separates you guys, I think, from a lot, is because it's like, hey, listen, we're trying to help you guys out. Like, we're not trying to hide anything. We're actually trying to help you guys navigate this. And I think a lot of new business owners basically need that, because I think a lot of times people don't understand. Like, think about, I'm usually anywhere between 2.5%, 3.5%, depending if I'm swiped in, right? I mean, when you look at all my fees, that's $300-$400 a month, depending how good of a month it was. I couldn't imagine doubling that. Now, imagine if you had 100,000 in sales, 200,000, 300,000. I mean, that's like a salaried person right there. That's a marketing budget. And then imagine how many businesses do you know out there that would be able to go, oh, yeah, by the way, yeah, you can't do any credit cards for the next week or two. I mean, how many people could survive that? I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen horror stories between billing, between losing it, going out of business, almost going out of business, going into debt. I mean, what kind of horror stories have you guys heard as a result of these practices?
Well, all the above. Anything from it being such a stretch, they're seeking alternative means of financing, going through secondary sources that are available. Maybe because of their business, they don't qualify for the traditional brands of funding.
Yeah.
So they're coming through secondary sources, which again is costing them more. So they're being taken advantage of on all levels, unfortunately, because, for instance, to just kind of give you an example, when I went to set up a business checking account for Canna Group, I was denied by one of the largest institutions in the country. Because of what we don't know. We do not sell the product. What do? We provide processing for. It took them 15 minutes just to read through their bylaws to figure out whether or not I qualified. I went down the street to another institution. They welcomed me with open arms, gave us a business credit card, and said, thank you very much for being a small businessman in our community.
Yeah. Or something as simple about companies out there that may be within the cannabis space but sell products that are not even related. Merchandise, hats, T-shirts, water bottles, stickers, that any other company out there selling their clothing line, they get their low risk rate, their regular merchant, no big freaking deal. But all of a sudden, if it's a cannabis-based company selling the same merchandise that any other store would, well, wait a minute, that's a whole different.
We don't know if we want to get
that's
into
a whole different deal. Like,
that's
no,
crazy.
dude, we're selling T-shirts and hats. Like,
well, and the thing is, I'd be really curious about is a lot of these companies that are doing the high risk that are maybe a little bit shadier. How many of them, through like maybe one shadow LLC through another, is basically the same big companies that are denying it?
Well, it's interesting because there's a tax law, right? It's the 280E, right? And so what that says is that folks within the cannabis space, they aren't given the same tax write-offs that a normal business is given, right? Yeah, so like, okay, so you're trying to do a legitimate business that is legal in your state. However, the IRS is denying you all the tax benefits that every other business gets in order to thrive, right? So what a lot of these companies are unfortunately having to do now is separate aspects of their business in that regard. So they have their whole cannabis side, that is whatever it is on that piece, the illegal side that falls under the Schedule 1 stuff. And then they'll have to have a whole separate accounting line for all of their other things that they may have, of which then there is an ability to write some of those expenses off, but still not the same benefits that a regular business gets. So it's like there's just roadblock after roadblock that's making it really hard for entrepreneurs within this space to deliver a product that clearly is in demand. I mean,
I just can't believe this is so dumb because it's like it's inevitability. You know, it's eventually going to be legal, and so why are we once again for a country that screams, oh, we have to make it easier to run business? the fact that they're doing things this way to make it so hard. And I think about the billions of dollars in tax revenue, the advantage to the local economies, because we're talking like a lot of these dispensaries. I mean, we're Dom and I are huge outdoors and skiing guys, and you see a lot of these small towns where they struggle enough just to make money, especially in off season when they're not skiing. And a lot of these dispensaries, the tourism, they're adding money to the local economies, and yet the very economies that I think need this, they're making it harder. You're raising the cost up so high, they're making it so tough to do business. And if we're really talking about getting serious about the drug problems in this country, if we make marijuana more easier, not necessarily easier to get per se, but making it to where it's not as hard and it's cheaper. You take it out of the black market, but yet they're making the dispensaries, I imagine, then pass that on to the consumer. It's like it's just absurd to me.
It's already proven where medical or recreational marijuana is legal and available to you. The opioid, be it overdoses and things like that, are decreasing.
I believe that.
It's a matter of numbers. Numbers and math and that don't lie.
Oh, they were even like, it's amazing how you can see how they try to manipulate numbers. It was in Colorado. There a traffic, so accidents have gone up in Colorado. And the thing is, more people were testing positive for marijuana. But then the thing is, so one group took that and go, look, you see, everywhere you legalize marijuana, accidents go up. And then the sheriffs themselves came out going, well, no, not real, because here's where it gets interesting. One, more people have lived here, right, or moving here. More people are smoking pot. But what you didn't see in there is that people will have pot in their system for 30 days. But when they looked at the levels, the intoxicated levels, that actually went down. So people had more pot in their system, there was more accidents because more people smoke pot. But people who were intoxicated from marijuana or inhibited because of their use, actually the numbers went way down, in that more people actually attributed alcohol than pot. So, and that's where it's bad when cops are coming out going, well, wait a minute, it's not like that. But it's just an example how people are trying everything in their damnness to kind of hold this thing back. And it's like, dude, you're not putting the ink back. Making this illegal again or going back would be like collecting guns and saying that we're not going to have the Second Amendment. It's not going to happen. So why don't we embrace it? And so our business owners can grow the economy. They can have tax revenue. They can actually have fair business practice. They can be protected by their state and federal governments from these things. I mean, just like in the mortgage industry, rules happen when people are taking advantage of the consumers. And it just seems like that's just what needs to happen here, but it really can't until our federal government changes it.
Well, and I don't want to throw Big Pharma under the bus, but do you kind of get the feeling that maybe they are a part of this resistance?
Oh, without a doubt,
of course they are.
I mean, because they don't,
So I have a very important person in my life who has dealt with, addictions to Big Pharma junk. And because of cannabis and the medicinally available cannabis now, is being able to overcome and fight that addiction and receive medicine in the form of cannabis that is way healthier, and in fact has had a hugely positive result that I can attest to, and there's cases like that over and over and over.
And how many people overdosed on marijuana last year? 0.0.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely, Big Pharma is part of it, but they're just one small piece. I mean, they're just
it's the financial companies.
Well, that's what I mean. I think it's the finances behind it too.
For me, it's like when I saw when you saw the monopolistic practices, basically, of how the people that are getting approved for dispensaries. And I can't speak to every other state, but you clearly see there's politicians on the take because they organize the laws and the approval with basically no oversight.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, there was a lawsuit against Ohio because how they graded. There was a company where they go, this is how you were graded, so that's why you didn't get approved. And they went back going, by your own logic, we should have been 10 points higher and got approved. Oh, my bad. Okay, we'll approve you. I mean, and that's how you know, and this is just one state, right? And then once again, Boehner and all these guys are getting involved and talking about how to make money. So there's a lot of people right now, if you're in the financial industry, if you're a politician, you're making a lot more money now taking advantage of it. And why change the system if you're making so much? Because that to me, almost, that's probably what the score really is. So now here's a question I have for you guys. Like towards the end of the show, I always have my guests kind of bring everything kind of home and something that's very tangible. And so one thing I'd love for you guys to kind of maybe give, like, so if we're a listener right now and you're in the marijuana industry, and how to know, one, if you're being taken advantage of, or what you can kind of do to basically make sure you're being taken care of. What would some advice to them be? And then, or two, if someone is thinking about getting into the industry, what are some salient points that they can basically walk away with to go, okay, these are things I need to be paying attention to if I'm going to get into this industry?
Well, that's such a loaded question because of the fact that every state is different, and depending what state you live in is going to dictate that choice. Like, for example, in the state of Massachusetts, they require it to be a vertically integrated business where that business has to control it, from seed all the way to sale. So, if you live in the state of Massachusetts, unless you have deep, deep, deep pockets, the chances of you trying to get into the industry is going to be a little tough, right? Versus out in like California and Washington, where their laws are set more like those for the alcohol industry when Prohibition, was ended in 1933, and it's a 3-tiered system of the breweries and distributors to the wholesalers to the actual retail, which then kind of eliminates that and gives people the opportunity. Now, in those in California and Washington, people can still have businesses within all of the industry. However, it's not mandated that they have to, so that gives somebody an opportunity who may just want to open a retail shop, and that's all they want to do.
Right.
Or they have a green thumb, and they like growing, and they've been growing, pot for most of their life for themselves. Well, cool, this is something I'm great at, so I can do that. So, you're going to have to take a look at your state laws first and foremost. And then once you get past the state laws and what you can and cannot do and how that's going to work, then you start getting into the federal stuff with the IRS and the banks and how all of that's going to work. And from a financing standpoint, good luck.
Right.
Good luck. It's not like you're going to be able to go apply for a small business loan yet. And so somebody who's passionate about this and someone who wants to be in this industry, there's certainly going to be some roadblocks, but at the same time, it may not necessarily be, I would encourage folks who want to get into that to not think of it from an entrepreneurial standpoint, to think of it, okay, what are all of the, arenas within the cannabis business, and how can I somehow, get involved if it's something you're passionate about and that's the business you want to be in. Figure out what that fit might be for you.
Yeah. Sammy, any sage words of wisdom?
Well, just do your homework before you allow somebody to come in off the street you've never met to convince you to start doing business with them. Do your homework. Find out a little bit more about them. Don't make a rash decision. Unfortunately, like anything else, as we call this, the new green rush, there's a lot of people wanting to get involved.
Green rush. Hashtag green rush.
I like that. Yeah.
And it's just that. It is the green rush. It's the gold rush of the 1880s.
Yeah.
And with that, we're seeing a lot of people get involved. People that weren't here yesterday. So if you're going to do business with somebody, do business with somebody who's been in the industry for a while. Be it me, be it somebody else, but not the guy that just cropped up. When you look at websites, do your homework there. You'll see when they came into business, when they're copyrighted and so forth. Make sure it wasn't March 14th of 2019.
A little bit's changed,
Yeah, so just make sure you're doing your homework. You're dealing with people that are educated, that know the industry, that are going to be there for you, most importantly, as a partner, and not as just somebody trying to sell you a bill of goods.
Yeah, and that's great, Sammy, because that's kind of how we approach our business. We want to be able to go in, whether it's a seasoned veteran who's been in the cannabis biz for a long time, or it's a brand new startup, someone who's just starting their first dispensary. We want to be there as their partner, as you said, as their business consultant. That we're reading articles every day and subscribe to blogs, and we do our best to stay educated. Where somebody running a business, running a dispensary, may be so busy as a new entrepreneur they don't have time to do their research. So
That's where I think what you guys have been doing, that's what I really dig with you guys' websites, very much about educating people and helping people. Even if like they just go to the website just to learn about it, it's like, hey, we care about this industry, and even if you don't even do business with us, you guys are learning stuff. But I think as you guys are talking, it's like we're going over the laws. It's constantly changing. It's constantly in flux. And if you're going to trust somebody to kind of help guide you through it, you have to trust the people that, just like your doctor. I hope you're reading all the new research before you do surgery. Is there something else out there? I mean, because that's one thing that, and it's just right. What's going to like, when being in the radio game and now getting to a point where, hey, we have some sponsors, you have to start thinking about, well, hey, who do I want to be represented by? Just like you want to think about who you're doing business with, you want to think about, well, who's going to be sponsoring us, representing us, and vice versa. And that, and to me, honesty goes a long way. Between, my dad always kind of taught me about being honest in business. Heck, I remember there was a guy, his name was Butch, he was a car guy. I bought all my cars from him, and I remember I was flabbergasted one day when I bought one of my cars. He's like, well, what can you afford? And I was like, well, this is what I'm thinking. And he goes, well, turn the computer screen around. Well, this is my invoice, man. This is literally my cost. straight up showed it to me. I was like, damn, I've never seen it before. And he's like, so this is what it cost me. And he goes, I'm trying to make some money. Like, I can do this. I was like, hey, it's sold. And I bought every car from him ever since then, right? And I remember I asked him once, this was when I bought my second car from him, and I was like, dude, like, why do you do that? And he goes, honestly, like, I could try to get as much money as I can right now, and you'll never probably buy another car from me again, or I can be radically honest with you, and you're going to buy another car from me, and then you're going to buy other people you're going to recommend, and I'm going to make a ton more doing that. Plus, at what point have I made enough money, and how can I live with myself as a man if I'm going to, like, basically screw people over just to make myself a buck? Because I don't roll that way. And so I think there's a lot of people out there, and I think that are looking for that. And so I think it's awesome what you guys are kind of doing. But I think, bottom line here is that, people have to take care of themselves. Read the fine print, look at your contracts, do your research, because the reality is no one's going to take care of you. No one is going to help you out but you. You have to look out for yourself, and until the laws change, that's the way it's just going to be. And so I think you guys have given some really good kind of black and white knowledge of just, hey, listen, this is what you need to look out for. This is why it is the way that it is, and given some really good advice. I think it's awesome. And I think we've given people, another way of looking at this industry, made it more human, made it really more about growing businesses, which is what this country is about. And so that's kind of why we do our show the way that we do. It's just about looking at things in a different perspective. Where can they find you guys? Website,
GetHighRisk.com or Canna Group LLC.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
And then, of course, being a new sponsor of Great Matters Radio, you're going to find, you can also find on our advertising banner, Get High Risk. Yeah, I think it's just awesome what you guys are doing. I'm happy that we're able to kind of work, with each other. And I just dig it. It's not just marijuana business. You guys are helping a business out that you happen to be passionate about, but people need people to look out for them. And in business, anytime you have a business that you can work with, that's willing to help you out, that's honest, that genuinely, truly wants to help you out, that to me is worth its weight in gold.
And that's part of why we felt it was a good partnership to be with you, Mike, because as the premise of your show is to reach out to both sides and truly be, America's counselor, that you are trying to break down those barriers, and ultimately, when it comes down to it, helping all of us as Americans understand each other and work together. So, your ethos is exactly what we embody with our company as well. So, for us, we're very, very gracious and very thankful to be part of your network and part of your show.
Yeah, no, we're excited.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're super excited. We got some cool projects we'll hopefully be able to announce here in the next week or so. Some cool things, and then of course we will be going on the road. So of course we'll have one more episode here in the Columbus, but after that we're going to have a multiple part episodes going to be taking the show on the road out to Colorado. Dom will be there. Bill, you'll probably be phoning in because you won't be there. Sammy is going to be there as well.
I wouldn't miss it for you.
Yeah, so we're going to have some really cool stuff that we're going to be doing, taking the show on the road for a little bit.
Question for you. Will John Boehner be there?
I don't know. He might be. I don't know. Maybe we can strap a snowboard on him. We'll find out.
He said he'd pencil us in.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, we got some really cool stuff kind of coming. But want to thank you guys. Canna Group, Dom, Sammy, of course, Bill. You can find them at the armchairqb.org. And of course, on the Reporters Network, you can Armchair QB Show. And yeah, on that note. So we always learn everything on this show, kind of look at things from a lot of different perspectives and everything. And I think we learned a lot today. But I think what we also realized doesn't matter the business. We're all Americans, small business owners, big business owners. We all want to be treated fairly. It's time to get our congressmen, our politicians, everyone on board just to kind of, maybe pay attention and look at this industry a little bit differently.
Maybe when they change the laws, we'll change the show to Green Matters.
Green Matters?
Just saying.
Hey, high times.
Just a thought.
Hashtag green. Was it Green Rush?
Green Rush.
Hashtag Green Rush.
I like that.
All right, everybody. On that note, as always, people are asking, hey, man, you a Democrat? You a Republican? You a liberal? Conservative?
Are you John Boehner?
You John Boehner? Say, fuck that noise. My ass is gray. All right, everybody. Until next time. Peace.